should be. Stand up while we read this verse. It's one verse. Exodus 20, verse 7. Do not misuse the name of the Lord your God, because the Lord will not leave anyone unpunished who misuses his name. Or, do not take the name of the Lord in vain, because the Lord will not leave anyone unpunished who takes his name in vain. Depending on your translation. Okay? Please take a seat. Lord, I ask that you open your word tonight, that you would give me your words, that you would fill up my mind, fill up my heart, fill up my mouth, and just open our ears and hearts to hear what it is that you have for us tonight, God. I pray that our time here tonight will not be in vain, but that it will be fruitful in your name. Amen. Okay, so we're looking at the third commandment. We've looked at the first two. Now we're on number 3. There are 10. We're on the third one. Okay? And the third commandment, as we just read, do not take the Lord's name in vain. That's the way it's said most of the time. Okay? I think the HCSB and the NIV, which is what some of you have, says it a little more clearer, which is do not misuse the name of the Lord. Okay? That's what we're looking at. So, our number one goal tonight, okay? Tonight, you're going to get one thing out of this message. Know this. As a Christian, your number one goal, my number one goal, our number one goal as a Christian should be to hallow the name of Jesus with our lives. Okay? To hallow the name of Jesus with our lives. As a Christian, that should be our number one priority, our number one goal. Okay? And as we go through this, that will make a lot more sense, but that should be our number one goal. So, maybe you're like me. Maybe when at your age or a little younger, and when I was younger than you, the third commandment, don't take the Lord's name in vain. The way that I thought of this, the way it was kind of approached, honestly, as far as I was taught to learn this, was that means you don't say stuff like, oh my God, right? And I still correct my kids for saying that. You don't say, oh my God, say, oh my goodness, or oh man, okay? We don't say, oh my God. And you certainly don't say the cuss word that includes God's name, right? GD was like mind-blowing. Like you'd get your arms torn off and beat to death for saying that, right? But that's pretty much it. Okay? Don't say that word. Don't say, oh my God. Don't even think about saying that. Don't even say, oh my gosh. That's too close to oh my God. Don't say that, right? But other than that, if you can avoid those two things, then you pretty much got this commandment covered. That's the way I approached it. And maybe that's the way you've kind of approached it. Or maybe you haven't really thought about it at all, which is a good possibility. You haven't really thought about the way you use God's name, or even what that means, or even knew there was 10 commandments, and this is the third one. You could ask half the people in our church, what's the third commandment? And they'd have to think about it for a while before they came up with it. They'd probably have to go look it up, to be honest. But as we dig in tonight, we're going to find out there may be a little more to it than that. Okay, so again, third commandment, do not misuse the name of the Lord your God, because the Lord will not leave anyone unpunished who misuses his name. Or it may say, will not leave them guiltless if they misuse my name. Okay, same meaning. All right, so first of all, if we're not supposed to use the Lord's name in vain, then what does that mean? Let's define what vain means, because the word vain in the English language has a ton of meanings, and every single one of these can be applied to what God means by not taking his name in vain. Okay, so here's from that guy named Webster. Here's what vain means. Okay, having no real value, idle, worthless, futile, useless, foolish, silly, having or showing undue or excessive pride in oneself, right? That guy's so vain. That's what that means. Without success or result, to do something in vain is a waste of time without success or result. Or in an irreverent or blasphemous manner. The word blasphemous is equal to using the Lord's name in vain. When you see that word in the Bible and you hear that word said, it means you are saying something against God's name. That's what it means. Okay, so that's what in vain means. Take the Lord's name in vain, which is obviously a whole lot more than saying, oh my God, or using God's name with a cuss word. Okay? It's a lot more than that. And we're hopefully going to clear up how important that is. But the second thing is, if that's what in vain means, all those things, okay, to be idle, not moving, worthless, futile, useless, foolish, silly, pride in oneself, without result, no success, irreverent, or blasphemous, okay? If that's what in vain means, then what does it mean to take a name or to carry a name, right? Or to use a name? What does it mean when we say that? All right, let's look at some examples of what that could mean. So, when do we do this? How do we do this? Any name, not just God's name, any name. How do we take a name, or use a name, or carry a name? That's another way this is translated. Carry God's name. First of all, names are used for authority. Okay, that's one way that we use names. Names are used for authority. For instance, when you were a kid in elementary school, or maybe even still to this day, someone says, "Hey, you can't do that," and you say, "Well, my so-and-so said that," right? You're using that name for authority, right? Your daddy, your uncle, my teacher, my cousin, my principal, my whatever, said that I could, which means I can. I'm invoking the power of their name and saying that I can do that, no matter what you say, okay? Or, here's one that will hit home to you. And I've seen this so many times in the hallways as a teacher and a coach for 11 years. Principal stops you in the hallway, right? Which would be Miss Foster currently. And says, "What are you doing?" What's going to be the first thing out of your mouth most of the time? "Well, Miss So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so said that I can go to the bathroom, or I'm doing an errand for them, or whatever." But the first thing you're going to say is their name. You're going to mention their name. Why? Because you think it's going to keep you out of trouble. Because that teacher has the authority to allow you in the hallway. First thing you're going to do. Right? So names carry authority. Okay, those are just two simple examples of that. Another things names do. Names equal associations. Names equal associations. When you hear some names, you automatically associate it with something. Okay? I'll give you some examples. If I say LeBron, and what does it go with? Basketball. You hear LeBron James, you think basketball. You cannot have a clue about basketball. You can never watch basketball. But if you hear the name LeBron James, you think basketball. You might start thinking of other things after that, good or bad. But the first thing you're probably going to think of is basketball in some form or fashion, right? What about this? Serena Williams. Tennis. One of the greatest tennis players ever, by the way. What about this? Bill Gates. Money. Right? Money. Bill Gates is so wealthy, has been the number one wealthiest guy, or second, for so many years that instantly Bill Gates is associated with money. Okay? Hip-hop songs, pop songs, you name it. When they want to think or make you think of money, they use the name Bill Gates. Right? Never mind Microsoft and stuff like that. Some people might think of that, but first thing the average person will think of when they hear Bill Gates is money. That's what it's associated with. His name is associated with money. Okay? Arkansas. Razorbacks. Okay? I grew up in Texas, and when I thought of Arkansas, the first thing I thought of was Razorbacks. Second thing is hillbillies, but that was before I moved here. Okay? That's from the outside looking in. What about this? Babe Ruth. Baseball. And or home runs. Okay? Babe Ruth, home runs. Held the record forever. So names equal associations. Okay? Names can have authority, names can carry authority, and names have associations. When you hear certain names, they are automatically associated with certain things. The third thing, names have a reputation. Names have a reputation. Now, this example I'm fixing to use may be too far prior to your time for you to get it. But if I said that guy over there, he's a real John Wayne when it comes to, right? What does that mean? Yeah, he's tough. He's savage. He's a go-getter. He don't take any crap, right? I used to have a friend that called the cheap toilet paper this is way off color, but the cheap toilet paper that's at school, he called it John Wayne toilet paper because it won't take crap off anything. Right? Sorry. So What about this? What if I said he's a real Marion Michael Morrison when it comes to, does that mean anything to you? That's John Wayne's real name, right? What if he had to change his name to John Wayne? Marion Morrison. It just doesn't carry the same weight. Anyway, names have a reputation. What about this? When you hear the word Disney, you think of certain things, right? You think of princesses and you think of good movies. Think of how many movies you've watched Disney that you love. Don't act like you're too cool for Disney movies. Right? It's got a reputation. You know when the movie says Disney movie, you're expecting something good.
Yeah.
Right? Or here's an example. This event we're fixing to have today is the Super Bowl of table tennis. Okay? Super Bowl carries a reputation. It's the best, it's the biggest, it's the grandest. So we use that as an idiom. We use that as the Super Bowl of XYZ whatever. It has a reputation behind it. Okay? Here's an example. Would you name your son Lucifer?
No.
No. Right? First of all, it's weird, even if it didn't make you think of the devil. It's a weird name anyway. Don't name your kids weird names. Don't name your kids weird names. Don't do that. Okay? What about this? Would you name your daughter, and you may not know this name, but you probably wouldn't because it's weird, but would you name your daughter Beelzebub?
What?
She's a wicked, just mean woman, terrible woman in the Old Testament. Okay? When you get to that point, think of this. Hear me now, believe me later. When you get to the point that you have kids, or you're going to have a child, and you're getting ready to name that child, there'll be certain names that will be crossed off the list. You may marry someone that has wanted to name their son Michael their whole life. Okay? But you may think, ain't no way. And here's why. Because when you hear that name, you think of somebody that you grew up with that you don't like. Guaranteed, you can ask any adult, and there are certain names they had crossed off their list before they ever had a child. I'm not naming, and if it gets brought up, nope, why not? Because it reminds me of so-and-so. I don't, it's a reputation. So names have authority. Names equal associations, and names carry a reputation. Okay, so that's what it means to use a name. Okay, that's what it means to use a name. Now we don't like people misusing our names, do we? You like people misusing your names. You want somebody using your name for authority that's unauthorized, right? To do something saying that you said it was okay to do that if it wasn't okay to you for them to do that. Of course not. As you get older, that will mean even more to you. Do you want people associating your name with things that aren't true or that you don't like? No, nobody likes that. Nobody likes their name to be dragged through the mud, right? This one will hit a little more home. Do you want people to use your name in association with things that ruins your reputation? That's one of the things that you get the maddest about. We all do. Everybody does. Nobody wants their name ruined or tarnished or messed with, and they certainly don't want it lied about, right? Or gossiped about or anything else. We protect our names. Think of this. Big corporations spend millions and millions and millions of dollars making sure that their name, the name of their company, the name of their brand, the name of their product is used properly. It's used with authority, with consented authority, in a way that reflects how they want it to be reflected, right? I mean, they spend millions of dollars on lawyers and court fees and suing people and taking them to court because it is not okay for us to use a company's name and product name in a way that hasn't been authorized. Heck, we've even got crimes. We've got laws that make doing these certain things crimes, don't we? Like forgery, right? Signing on a document without authorization to sign that person's name. That is a crime. That is a pay a fine, go to jail crime to do that. Forgery, identity theft, trademark infringement, right? Trademark infringement, fraud. Like if I was going to start a beverage company, right? I'm going to start a beverage company. I'm not sure, but I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to have it in these little aluminum cans. And I'm going to make it red with silver writing. It's going to be a brown, sugary liquid with a little bit of caffeine so I can addict everybody. It's going to taste awesome. I may even talk about how refreshing it is. And I'm going to call it a Coca-Cola. Right? I mean, I can't do that, can I? I can't do it by law. I would get in big trouble doing that. So would you. We have laws against this, right? Well, guys, here's the thing. The God who created the universe and everything in it, including each one of you and me, he don't like it either. He doesn't want his name used in an unauthorized way or use it to give authority when something he wouldn't give authority for. He doesn't want it, his name to be associated with things that he wouldn't be associated with. And he sure as heck doesn't want his name to be used in a way that would affect his reputation in a way that it doesn't represent his true character. It's a big deal to God. Okay? In the Proverbs, the wisdom sayings, right? The Proverbs 22:1 says, a good name is to be chosen over great wealth. That's for us. But that's also showing how important a name is to God. Right? A good name is to be chosen over great wealth. That means if you have a choice to do the right thing to protect your name, or maybe tell a lie, maybe do something dishonest, maybe do something you shouldn't do, maybe defraud someone to get a whole bunch of money, God tells us in the Proverbs, Solomon's writings, that you'd be better off keeping your name good than you would be gaining great wealth. That's how important it is. Okay? Matter of fact, go to your first paper mark. Flip to your first paper mark, Leviticus 24. Let's flip over there. I got mine marked too if I can get to it. Okay, I don't think there it is. All right, Leviticus 24, picking it up in verse 10. Check this out. This is how God feels about blasphemy, using his name improperly. Now the son of an Israelite mother and an Egyptian father, so this was a person of mixed heritage, was among the Israelites. A fight broke out in the camp between the Israelite woman's son and an Israelite man. Her son cursed and blasphemed the name. Did you say the name? Right? Find that interesting? This is in Leviticus. It doesn't say the name of God. It certainly doesn't say Yahweh. It certainly did in the original. It may in ours, but it certainly did in the original. Because that was how important the name of God was. Such a big deal that they wouldn't even say it, wouldn't even write it. So they just said, he blasphemed and cursed the name, and they brought him to Moses. His mother's name was Shelemith, a daughter of Debri of the tribe of Dan. What's the point in that? That's showing you how historically accurate, painstaking details the Israelites kept all the way through. Right? There's no culture in the world that has a documented history like the Israelites and the Jews. It's unbelievable. Right? So, he was from the tribe of Dan. They put him in custody until the Lord's decision could be made clear to them. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, bring the one who has cursed to the outside of the camp, and have all who heard him lay their hands on his head, which means to impugn sin. That's the visualization there. Lay their hands on his head, then have the whole community stone him. This is God speaking to Moses. And tell the Israelites, if anyone curses God, he will bear the consequences of his sin. Whoever blasphemes the name of Yahweh, I am who I am, is to be put to death. The whole community must stone him. If he blasphemes the name, he is to be put to death, whether the foreign resident or the native. Put to death for blaspheming God's name. Okay? Now when is this? This is about 1200-ish BC. Okay, so a little over 3,000 years ago, more than likely. That's what most people would say historically. Okay, that's when this time period is. The Exodus and going from Egypt to the Promised Land and all that. That's where we are. 1200, 1250, give or take. Now, if a man kills anyone, he must be put to death. Whoever kills an animal is to make restitution for it, life for life. If any man inflicts a permanent injury on his neighbor, whatever he has done to him, fracture for fracture, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. Whatever injury he inflicted on the person, the same is to be inflicted on him. Whoever kills an animal is to make restitution for it. But whoever kills a person is to be put to death. You are to have the same law for the foreign resident and the native. In other words, it can't be harder on the foreign resident. It's the same, which was a huge deal during this time for God to say that. Like he was saying, we're equal. You're not special Israelites because you're Israelites. You're special because I said you're special. That's the only reason. After Moses spoke to the Israelites, they brought the one who had cursed to the outside of the camp and stoned him. So the Israelites did as the Lord had commanded Moses. Now, just in case you don't get this picture, stone him literally means to pick up rocks and throw it at the person until they die. Continuously. Rock after rock after rock after rock after rock. I've seen it on a movie, only way I've ever seen it, and it is hard to watch. Right? It's not a very pretty way to die. It'd be one of the ways I would choose not to die if I had a choice. I want to die by being stoned. Okay? But why did I read that other part? Because God is saying, catch this. God is saying that blaspheming his name is equal to what? Murder. That's how serious it is. He literally just said right there in those scriptures that blaspheming his name is the equal punishment for murder. Blaspheme my name, you die. Kill a human being, you should die. Right? Now,